Level 1. The Last Debrief. You sit in a gray room in Langley for the last time. No windows, one door. A man across the table who you've reported to for 11 years and whose last name you still don't know. He slides a folder across the table. Inside is a new identity, a name that isn't yours, a social security number with clean history, a backstory that says you spent the last decade working cybersecurity for a private firm in Amsterdam. He says, "You're done, effective today." No ceremony, no handshake, no thank you. Just a folder and a plane ticket to Portland, Oregon. You ask why Portland. He says, because nobody looks for anything in Portland. You take the folder, you take the ticket. You do not look back when you leave the building, but you count the exits anyway. You always count the exits. Level 2. Civilian. The apartment is on the 3rd floor of a quiet building near a park. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen with a window that faces the street. You chose the 3rd floor deliberately, high enough to see approaching threats, low enough to jump if necessary. You arrange the furniture so your back is never to the door. Your neighbor introduces herself on day 2. Her name is Carol. She's 60-something. She brings you banana bread and asks what you do for work. You say consulting. She asks what kind. You say the boring kind. She laughs. She tells you about her cat. She tells you the building's trash pickup is Tuesday and Thursday. She is the most disarming person you've spoken to in 11 years. That night, you run her face through 3 mental databases before you remember that you don't have access to databases anymore. You eat the banana bread standing over the sink. It's the best thing you've tasted in months. That bothers you more than it should. Level 3. Learning to be normal. Week 2. You get a job. The cover identity has credentials, so you walk into a mid-sized tech security firm downtown, and within 4 days, you're hired as a senior consultant making $120,000 a year. The work is easy, almost insultingly easy. You sit in meetings where people argue about software vulnerabilities that you could patch in your sleep. You draft reports. You attend lunches. You learn everyone's coffee order because you cannot stop building profiles on people. Your coworker Marcus talks for 11 minutes about his fantasy football team. You realize halfway through that you've cataloged his tells. When he's lying, when he's nervous, when he wants something. You're doing it automatically, like breathing. You go to a therapist. The agency recommended it before discharge. She asks how you're adjusting to civilian life. You say fine. She asks what fine feels like. You think about it for a while. You say loud. Everything is very loud. She nods. She writes something down. You angle yourself to read her notepad. Old habit. It says hypervigilance, persistent. You already knew that. Level 4. Her. Month 2. Her name is Maya. You meet her at a bookstore on a Saturday. She's reaching for the same novel. You both laugh. You buy her coffee across the street. She's an architect, straightforward, funny, asks good questions, and actually waits for the answers. You like her immediately, which means you spend the next 48 hours running threat assessments on the situation. Is she real? Yes. Is the meeting coincidental? Almost certainly. Does the fact that you can't stop wondering if it's coincidental mean you're broken? Possibly. You go on a second date, a third. By the 4th, she asks about your life before Portland. You give her the cover story. Amsterdam, cybersecurity, long hours, not much else to tell. She listens carefully. She says, you leave a lot of space in your sentences. You say, what does that mean? She says, like there's more there, but you're deciding how much to give. You look at her. You say, everyone does that. She says, not like you. You change the subject. But you keep thinking about it later. She's right, and the fact that she noticed means she's paying attention. You're not sure if that's good or no. Level 5. 6 months. 6 months. You have a routine. Coffee at 6:40. Run at 7:10. Exactly the same route, varied in 3 patterns, rotated randomly. Work by 9. Home by 6:30. You've stopped checking the street from your window every morning. Mostly. You and Maya are spending 4 nights a week together. She keeps a toothbrush at your place. You know her schedule by heart, not because you tracked it, but because you just do. She introduces you to her friends, a dinner party in Northeast Portland. Wine and pasta and someone's dog wandering between chairs. You sit at that table and you laugh at a joke and you think, this is what people do. This is what people just do. On the drive home, Maya is quiet for a while. Then she says, "You seemed far away tonight." You were. You were watching the exits. You were clocking which guests arrived together and which ones drifted apart. You were reading the body language of a man named Derek who kept touching his ear when he spoke. Old habit. You reach over and take her hand. You say, "I'm here." It's not entirely a lie. Level 6. The phone call. Month 7. Your personal cell rings at 2:17 a.m. Unknown number. You are awake before the second ring. You answer and say nothing. A voice says, "Portland suits you." Your body goes cold. Not from fear, from recognition. The voice belongs to a man you worked with in Istanbul in year 4. His name in the field was Crane. You don't know what his name is now. You say, "This number is clean." He says, "It was." He says he needs 24 hours of your time. 1 meeting, 1 conversation. He says it's not agency business. He says it's personal. You say you're out. He says he knows. He says that's why I'm asking you and not them. You say no. You hang up. You lie in the dark for 4 hours. At 6:40, you make your coffee. At 7:10, you run your route, pattern 3. You check for surveillance at 7 natural waypoints without breaking stride. You don't find anything. That almost makes it worse. Level 7. You go. 3 days later, you meet Crane at a rest stop off I-84, 40 miles east of the city. His idea. He looks older, eyes like a man who stopped sleeping somewhere around year 6 and never started again. He tells you about a name, a man named Volkov, Russian private intelligence, not government, freelance. He's been building a file on retired agency personnel for the last 18 months, not to sell to Moscow, to sell to anyone. Their real names, their cover identities, their current locations. Crane says there are 9 names on the list. He says yours is one of them. The air at the rest stop smells like pine and diesel. You watch a family load their minivan 30 meters away. You say, "How complete is the file?" Crane says, "Complete enough." You think about Maya, about the toothbrush, about the dinner party, about Derek touching his ear. You say, "Does anyone else know about this?" Crane says, "Not yet, and that's the window." You already know what he's going to ask. You already know what you're going to say. You tell yourself, it's just this once. You know what that means. Level 8. Back in. You tell Maya you have a work emergency, a conference in Seattle. 3 days. She says, okay. She says, call her when you land. She hugs you at the door. You hold on a second longer than usual. She notices. She pulls back and looks at you. She says, "You okay?" You say, "Yeah, just tired." You drive north. You don't go to Seattle. Over the next 72 hours, you move through a version of yourself you thought you'd filed away. You access a dead drop cache outside Spokane. Inside, a clean phone, $40,000 in mixed currency, a weapon, and an address. Your hands don't shake when you open the case. That's the part that stays with you. Your hands don't shake. Like the last 7 months never happened. Like the banana bread and the bookstore and the dinner party are just cover. Like maybe they always were. Level 9. The cost. You find Volkov. You don't need to know the details of how. What matters is what happens after. The file is destroyed. The 9 names are safe. Crane disappears back into whatever he came from. You drive back to Portland on a Tuesday morning. You park outside your building. You sit in the car for 20 minutes. Then you go upstairs. Maya is at the kitchen table with her coffee and a set of blueprints. She looks up. She says, "How was Seattle?" You say, "Fine." She studies your face. She does that thing she does, reads the space in your sentences. She says, "What happened?" You say, "Nothing. Long trip." She sets down her coffee. She says, "I called the hotel." Silence. She says, "You weren't registered there. You weren't registered anywhere in Seattle." You don't answer. She says, "I've been sitting here for 2 days trying to think of a reason, a good reason, any reason." You look at her. You think about 11 years of training, of misdirection, of cover stories that survived polygraphs. You say nothing. Because you can't do it to her. You can build a lie that she'll believe. You've built harder ones. But you can't. She stands up. She says, "I don't need to know everything. I just need to know if I'm safe." That question sits in the room like a stone. And the worst part isn't that you don't know the answer. The worst part is that you do know it. She is safe. You made sure of that. But the fact that it required making sure, the fact that being with you is something that requires safety management, that's the answer she's actually asking for. You say, "You're safe." She picks up her jacket. She says, "I know. That's not what I asked." And she walks out. Level 10. What remains? 2 weeks later. The apartment feels like a waiting room. You still arrange the furniture with your back never to the door. You still count the exits when you enter a building. You still rotate your running routes in 3 patterns. You go back to the therapist. She asks how things are going. You tell her about Maya, not the real reason, just that it ended. She asks how you're feeling about it. You think about that for a while. You say, "Like I was on assignment and the operation closed." She goes quiet. She says, "Do you believe that?" You look at the wall. You say, "No." She writes something down. You don't try to read it this time. On your way home, your clean phone buzzes, not the personal one, the clean one. A message from a number that will be inactive in 60 seconds. 5 words. "There's a new situation. Interested?" You stand on the sidewalk in Portland in the November rain. You think about the folder they handed you in Langley. You think about Carol and the banana bread. You think about Maya reading the space in your sentences. You think about your hands not shaking. You type 1 word back. You don't hesitate. The message sends. The number goes dead. You put the phone in your pocket. You walk home. You start counting exits. Some people retire. Some people just relocate. The mission doesn't end. It just changes address.